All right, welcome back to the Preach It Better podcast, where we are trying to create conversations so pastors can learn how to tell stories better, how to be clear with the nuance of the biblical text, and then everything in between. Pastors are called to big things, and we want to make sure they're ready to carry those big things, not only on the platform, but in their day-to-day. And I'm joined today, our guest today is none other than Matthew Davis, pastor and founding pastor of Blueprint Church in Houston. My man, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you, Micah, man. I'm super excited. Let's talk about preaching. It's one of my favorite topics, man.
I love it. Let's just jump right in then. Tell me I know your schedule changes. I know we talked before we started recording. You're moving offices, you're moving your home, you got a baby at home. Maybe no week looks the same, but if you had a dream week for prep, what would that look like? You just got done Sunday. Yeah. You had a killer weekend at Blueprint. It's Monday. Tell me your dream week of message and sermon prep all the way to Sunday.
Oh, man, that's a great question. I think what you said is critical. Like, it's always evolving. Like, even me being young, how I think about sermon and sermon prep is different from how I did 5 or 8 years ago. Ideally, for me, what I would think about, let's just say, we're in a series, so I'm gonna want to flesh out. Like, I kind of work deductively, so I like big idea. If we're going topical, in for instance, I'm gonna go big idea. I probably want to sit there and obviously get my word. I want to spend an hour praying, reading, really trying to figure out, God, like what are we saying in this time? What is needed? I'm a firm believer of, like, I believe structure, strategy, process, system for sure. But I'm a firm believer in also, God, what are you saying for now? Like, whenever I have my XP or people I disciple in preaching, like, we have to be careful to make sure this is like not what do I want to say, God, what do you want to say? This is an opportunity to speak on behalf, and so obviously it'll be your prayer, your studying, and then I'm gonna want to figure out what is my big idea, and I think about stories and points early on. What are big ideas that I have, and what stories can I connect to them? So it'll be 1 or 2 hours on Monday. I'm not here yet, but ideally I would like to be done by Thursdays.
Okay.
On what it is, to have a true Sabbath on a Friday, run through it on my mind on Saturday, and then I'll be done. So I'm not I know some guys who are incredible communicators. They can knock out a sermon in, like, they'll work 8-10 hours straight in a day, and it's like,
for sure,
that's not me. My ADHD is way too heavy for that. And so okay. I'm gonna go 2, 4, 3, another 1.5, 2, maybe, and then you add in your studying and stuff like that. But that's kind of what my ideal week would be like.
I love it. And so, is there a collaboration? I'm a collaborative guy. Yeah. I feel the Holy Spirit more when I'm talking about it, right? Yeah. Like in this moment today, most likely, than I do by myself. And that may be just me, my problems, like you talk about ADHD and like my thing about. I would love to discuss. So are there voices that you have in that process, and is there a time where those voices are closed? It's closed for business. Don't give me any more input, or is it just kind of, hey, I'm fluid constantly, or it's like, hey, tell me what you think about this series, this big idea. What are you hearing? What are you seeing? Yeah. And then there's a dime that, hey, don't add anything else, and I gotta cook. Talk to me about that a little bit, like collaboration.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of, like, shared thinking and the idea of this. So, like, my XP, he incredible communicator, great young leader. I've been discipling him for almost 10 years. Wow. So now, like, what we'll do is we'll set up a couple times in the week, and I'll preach and I'm say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. Like, so we'll do this, and, like, I'll say, hey, this is what I'm thinking. And since we'll talk, and he'll be like, man, I really think, PM, if you add this in here, I remember when you brought this up in a meeting, A, B, C, D, E. So, yeah, we'll definitely go through. And what I've learned, this is new, because I'm a verbal processor. Like, I've learned this even through myself in therapy. Like, I'm a visual person. And what I'll find out is that what would hurt me is that I would preach my sermon, like, on a walk. I would walk around my neighborhood, walk somewhere. Yeah. And I would preach this entire sermon. I'm like, man, that's great. And then I would forget it. And I was like, and then so what I started doing is I was like, hey, I'm like, PD, come in this room, like, let me preach and talk to you. Jot some notes down for me. Okay. Like, tell me where you think there's some gaps or et cetera. And then we'll ask. And it's even been times we do a check-in between services the first time I preach it. And I'll say, hey, was this effective? Do you think? And he was like, hey, don't change anything, or
I love
hey,
it.
maybe let's stay in that intro a little bit longer.
love
Don't be
that.
afraid to press into this story. So yeah, but it's one of those things, and with leaders and communicators like us, he's earned that place
Yeah.
to be there. I think because I think that we have to be very careful as communicators to not seek validation all
Come
the
on.
time, because what we
Yeah.
want to hear is sometimes people, if we're insecure and they're like, oh, you're great, you're incredible, and it's like, yeah, but maybe we weren't doing as well, right? And there is some things, and then also they have to be trusted and to know what not to say so it does not throw you off.
For sure.
Because he also knows there's been times in preaching where I'm like, man, I felt a little insecure about that message. I don't think that I did well.
Yeah.
And he wouldn't be like, yeah, you sucked. He'll be
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
man, you know what? Nah, I think you did a lot better than what you think. Like, I think, just do this. And so I think that that's a very vulnerable place. And he earned that. So, yeah, I'm a huge proponent of shared thinking.
I love that. I literally just watched a TikTok of Pastor Anthony Mitchell talking about if your best friend's a yes friend. And like if they can't, Proverbs says the sting of a friend's better than a kiss of an enemy. So like, but there's that art to that. It's not binary on, hey, when feeling that when my guy's, and having that guy. I think speaking to that, and the pastors, if you're listening, if you don't have this guy, if you don't have your Jonathan, if you don't have this person that's like, and not always giving you notes. Like I cut my teeth in ministry with my father, and we did stuff like this together. And so Saturdays he would run his whole message. We'd be me and a couple of guys sit and watch and listen. And his main researcher always said, "Hey," and he always wrote them on newspapers. The guy was old school. He just had a newspaper, and he wrote in the margins notes for Dad. But every time he'd approach Dad, he'd say, "Hey, do you want these?" Like that's the first thing. "Hey, do you want these?" And if he said no, throw it in the trash. I don't think he ever said no because Dad was a learner. He wanted it. But that permission, even with trust, right? We have your trust. I'm his son. This guy's been with him for 10 years. We have his trust. Just because you have trust doesn't mean the timing's always there, right? Like you're saying, hey, I feel insecure in this thing, my man. I need some kid gloves maybe for a little bit and then, get me there. So I love that you're saying that. And it takes such a secure leader, not to just praise you specifically, but like hearing that you say, hey, I got a guy in my life that helps me. I feel like pastors, and I've never been a lead pastor, so help me with this. It feels like in general these guys are so fearful of being seen as vulnerable or they need help or get help. And do you see that? Speak to that a little bit on and if you feel that way, and what is that? Because you're the man of God, and if there's a chink in the armor, my sheep will stray. What is that?
I think it is there's a duality to it, right? Like I think that there is I was just having a conversation in discipleship dinner last night, but it is the perceived perception of the audience or the people you shepherd. Sure. And it is the internal insecurity of the shepherd. And when you mix that, it becomes a very dangerous potion, because what it is that I can't show you too much of my vulnerabilities or my weaknesses. This is the temptation of the enemy. I can't show you too much of my temptation or my vulnerabilities, my weaknesses, because then you may see me as unfit to follow. Because this is a thing. Sheep don't like blood. Shepherds have to deal with it, but sheep don't like blood. So so as a shepherd, it's my job to tend to your wounds. It's not your job to tend to mine. And so what we almost feel like at times is like I need to guard myself. Yeah. And then there can be unrealistic expectations of the people that you lead, because they look and it's like, which is why I think honestly, Micah, I'm not good at a lot of things. One of the things that I have embraced, and I think that our church is good at, is we are authentic. Like I'm like, they always say, like I step on people's toes. Like I'm a very confrontational person in life. I'm a confrontational communicator. So like I don't mind challenging people and like calling out certain things. In that, I call out myself more than anybody. And I was saying this, I do this for two reasons. Number one is because I'm never going to give you the opportunity to deify me. I'm not perfect. I'll never be, I am not God. There's a standard that you should hold me to. Always, as your pastor and as your leader, there's a biblical standard that I should be held to in all aspects, but don't ever put me in the standard of Jesus, because I'm not him. Yeah. But also it reminds me of like, hey, this is a place to where I put humility here, because I think and you might not have been going here, but I'll go here. where we see a lot of blow-ups and with things in leaders' lives is because I think their lives get disintegrated because of that. Because we feel like we have to put on this act in front of people, and then we need to take off that cape for a little while, and they feel like, oh, I just need a breather. I just need to kind of get away from this because I had this act, this weight has been weighing on me, and so now I just need to go do something to make myself feel more human. Right. And then what happens is you find this release, and a lot of times we see that when you're disintegrated, you go back, and this release is either illicit, illegal, or immoral. Right. And now I found myself in a hole simply because I did not want to embrace my humanity and show it. Right. And so, I think it's and it's one of the greatest temptations and one of the greatest tactics, I believe, of the enemy for leadership to attack us in that way.
That's so good because I think Jesus gave us a 3-year example of what public ministry is. Yep. And there was humility in there, and there was brokenness in there. There was perfection, so that's the tough part that we deal with. Yeah. But Simon Sinek said, to gain trust, you don't offer help, you ask for help. And that's always been something that I've fought with, especially as a leader. You're saying, hey, I have to be fit to lead. Yep. The book of James tells us the standard of the teachers. Yeah. But at the same time, these teachers are human. And there's a difference in flesh and humanity, right? Humanity isn't immoral. Your flesh, and there's this intertwined difficulty of before we get on the other side of glory, we're going to be constantly battling and losing a lot of those battles. Yeah. So for you, how do you navigate that humanity, right? Because I don't want to be deified. I love that you said, hey, don't deify me, man. I'm not that guy. I'm not that guy, man. But at the same time, being fit to lead, to show a standard, but at the same time, hey, I think imperfect pastors show the grace and the redemptive power of God. So what is that? That's the tough part. Like, hey, I was imperfect. He makes us perfect through, but I still got to be at a level to preach and lead, right? That's the difficulty I feel like for you guys. And how do you navigate that both in your storytelling and your preaching and just your day-to-day leadership with your staff and family?
Yeah, I think, it's funny you say that. I don't know if I'm really good at this yet, right? and so, like my therapist, one of his greatest, one of our most tense conversations and topics has always been, Matthew, you struggle with being human, and you don't like that. And I'm like, well, I don't want to be perfect, Doc. And he was like, I think you do. Wow. And I was like, and I was like, well, I think you're wrong. And he was like, so we're kind of going back and forth. Come on. But this idea, he's like, when we look through you want to go through our notes and our conversations over the last 2 years, you struggle with it. Like you have this perfectionist identity. Some that's wrapped up in sports. Some may be wrapped up in childhood. Some may be wrapped in these expectations you have for yourself. But your biggest moments and your lowest moments are when you recognize, when you have to come face to face that you're human with your limitations. And so I think what do I do to actively work on that, whether it's in my leadership style, is I try to, I was a sociology major. There's this thing called authentic vulnerability. That's a sociological concept, which is the idea that when I am authentically vulnerable, because there's a difference between authenticity between being vulnerable and being transparent. Mm-hmm. I believe in being vulnerable. Transparent means it's like a house. It's like, hey, let me open the blinds. You can see into my house. Vulnerable, I'll let you into my house.
Oh, okay.
Two completely different concepts, right?
For sure.
And there's an idea. Now, everybody can't come to my bedroom, but I don't mind showing you my porch, right?
Yeah, for sure.
That is learned and that is earned. But so I try to have a level of vulnerability with my staff often, whether they're saying like, hey, I don't feel like I'm leading well in this area in specific. I'm working on this. I don't mind. I probably said therapy 4 times on here because I don't mind telling people and sharing that, like, hey, that there's something that I'm working in my communication from stage. Is I believe that that storytelling is so important, as we talked about, as you've been to, is that. So I don't mind telling stories about my deficits, and every time, because I can't stand. This is just me. I can't stand when you're the hero in every story.
For sure, dude.
Every time that I tell a story, I don't tell it about how I triumphed.
Yeah.
Like, because what we like to do is like, I used to struggle with this.
Yeah.
Now I conquer this. Yeah. I don't mind sharing like, hey, this is something that like, you know, they laugh at my church because I say I always struggle with a temper growing up, right. And even in my early adulthood, and I was just like, man, you know, y'all pay for your pastor. Like, I wanted to fight somebody last week, and they'll just start laughing, and I'm like, y'all, I'm serious. Like, so I felt somebody disrespect, and I had to literally work on myself. So I think dealing with that humanity first comes from acceptance and then admitting. I think, like, and not being afraid of it. But I try to keep it on the forefront because it keeps me. I think one thing when you look at Paul and he talks about what I don't want to do, I do, and what I do want to do, I don't do, and he talks about this wrestle with the flesh. I think that you're not wrestling if you can't acknowledge, and a lot of us don't have this awareness of what we're struggling with. So for me, I try to keep a forefront because you can only attack what you're aware of, right? For sure. I think some of us just have so many blind spots, as I did it many times in my life, and I still do probably. But yeah.
That's great, man. I love that. I love that. And obviously, if you're listening, you can hear quickly why Blueprint's doing so well, and your authenticity and vulnerability it explodes off the screen, bro. And watching you storytelling and watching you, I got the chance to watch you. They did that 7-minute, whatever 8-minute thing at ARC, whatever that TED Talk vibe type stuff, which I loved. Talk to me about some of your favorite storytellers. Now you can go into preachers, you can go into directors, writers, novelists. Who is somebody for you that just resonates with you? And if you could, the second question of that is, like, what specifically do you think it is about that book, that movie, that pastor that just seeps into your soul, the fabric of your, you know, the mitochondria, the ribosomes of your cells? Like, they put you in that spot.
Yeah. So let me give you 2.
Talk to me.
Number 1, I was just reading this book the other day. And so it's hard to say my favorite. So I'm just gonna give 2.
Okay. Top of my mind. Yeah, just give me some bangers. You don't have to.
Number 1, or number 1, what I'll say is this: I haven't seen in preaching a storyteller like Bishop T.D. Jakes.
Okay.
Right. Like when you watch, like, and so I used to. Like, I remember when I first kind of started getting into faith, and when I was younger, and my dad would, like, I would see him playing on TV and whatever it is, and like when I was in college at SMU, I used to go to the Potter's house on Sundays after the games or something like that, and the service would be 3 hours long, and he's preaching, no lie. I'm like, I know, now as a lead pastor, I'm like, there's no way y'all had a confidence monitor. There was no clock. Nah. It was, and he would preach for an hour and 45 minutes. And you wouldn't even know. You're just like, what? Because he's just storytelling throughout it. You know, you get into so many. You have, you know, Pastor Chris and Stephen Chandler and Dr. Darius Daniels and
Darius Daniels is my guy, dude. I love him.
Like, when you just mentioned, he taught something the other week on flesh and humanity. Or flesh,
yes, that's kind of where I got that. He was talking about that. I just saw the reel of it, but I didn't see the whole message. It's exactly where I pulled that from.
One of the most, what I think is phenomenal teachings, incredible. That, and then Mark Batterson, his book, The Circle Maker.
Okay, yeah, for sure.
When you like open it up in the beginning, and he's just like, I was there. I don't know. Sure. I feel like I was just sitting there. So I think those 2 just come off the top of my mind as incredible storytellers that speak into me, because I think one of the greatest things of telling stories is your ability to make me feel like I'm standing in there at the moment. If you're telling the story of the woman at the well, can I be one of the onlookers?
Yeah.
If you're telling me the story about how he caught the woman in the act of adultery and he stooped down, can I feel like I'm standing as one of the elders who end up casting their stuff? Yeah. Like, if you can do that, then I'm sitting there. Those type of communicators, I mean, they're, you know,
generational.
Yeah.
Well, it's funny because I think about this all the time. I love comedians. Like, stand-up comedy is like a thing for me, because I think Dave Chappelle, and I always ask, because I think Dave Chappelle's the best. That's just my thing. I think he's the best. I think the last couple, he just took another level. He's not even a comedian. I think he's I don't even know what to. I don't. My friends talk about. I don't know what to call him. A philosopher, a sage, a story. He's just a different guy. And so I always ask myself these questions. Though, how much of it is his voice?
Yeah.
Right. Because it's just funny. So I asked about T.D. Jakes. Like, this is his ambiance, the vibe. Like, if he was 180 pounds and had like a higher tenor, would it be the same? I don't know. I just think about that sometimes because I think it's everything, right? There's that tactile. You talk about storytelling and the visuals and because T.D. Jakes, man, like he almost commands you to listen, right? There's some people that will subtly draw you in, quietly, patiently, but T.D. Jakes demands you to listen. Yeah. Like you listen or you leaving. That's the only options, right? And so for you, in terms of like what we do in our humanity to Darius Daniels, right? Because there's a lot of guys that don't do it on purpose, but believe energy and speed are not the same. Yeah. Volume and passion and all these different ways to utilize your voice and subtleties and silence instead of filler words and all these different things. And so are you aware of these things? And if you are, how do you train yourself? So people listening, practically becoming a better storyteller, are there certain things that you do to avoid things that you know are bad habits and how to improve like the practicality? Because again, there's things to manage and there's things in the spirit, right? I love whatever the line is, don't manage the spiritual, but don't spiritualize management. Right, right. How many parking spaces you have is a management thing. You can pray over them if you want. There's only a certain amount of spots. You know what I'm saying? So like, I love that. So, but for me, I want to help pastors. Preparing is not a sin.
No.
I don't understand why the Holy Spirit. I've never heard him tell you go short.
Preparing.
You know what I'm saying? Have you ever heard a guy say, he's leading me to cut it short? So why is the Holy Spirit always doing kind of what you want him to do? Like that doesn't make it so. Talk to me about that a little bit and like what we can do practically. Obviously, the Spirit does what he does and can move and put us under the seats whenever he deems fit. Yeah. But what we do, we prepare. He brings the rain. We're going to put our hands on the plow. So what do you do in terms of the plow, in terms like your storytelling tactics?
Yeah, 100%. That because I think at the basis, let's look at it is that like communication is a skill.
Absolutely.
And in any skill. It is, and I think the same thing. We like can't over spiritualize it all the time. Like there is an actual skill set of knowing how to communicate. Right. And if it's a skill set, then it's broken down into specific things, like you just said. So you use Bishop T.D. Jakes when we talked, or when I said it earlier. Like there is something that is natural and innate about his ability. Like you can't clone it. He's one of one. Yep. It is what it is. But there are certain things which goes into how do I plow, and like I watch. Like there are certain things that I am naturally gifted at in communication, but there's certain things that I'm not. And so what I do is I think breaking it down into specific subsets of actual qualities of a skill set. So for instance, like for me, what I look at pace often. Yeah. So if I'm looking at somebody in storytelling, is I'll say, what is the speed, tonality? When does your voice inflection go up versus when does it come down? Right. What moments do you pause on versus not? So I'm a former quarterback, so I don't only believe in, I love film study. So and I didn't have somebody. So like for one of the reasons that I think tank with my executive pastor is because that's also one of the ways that I disciple him. Like he's a young preacher and he's incredible. So I'm like, man, I wish somebody did this with me. So you may only preach 6 times a year, but you get to be a part of 52 weeks a year. For sure. And so he gets to. So with that, and he's a way better communicator than me at his age than I was, which is the point. And so we'll watch, and I'll be like, hey, if I watch the sermon, like let's just take like Pastor Stephen Chandler, right? Phenomenal communicator, great storyteller. But if you
better dresser, if we can be honest, better dresser.
Of course,
my man is
every time I see him, I'm like, P.S. If you have, just let me just go in your closet, just take one.
Give me a second, just one.
Something. But if you look at how P.S. preaches, is he has this very long, drawn out, what is God saying? And then it goes into there. Dr. Darius Daniels is very much so. He's going to speak, and it's going to be he's a punchline. He has a thought that's going to get you, and he's going to let it sit right there in a moment. Stephen Furtick is going to tell you a story and build you up. So all that Pastor Chris incredible. He's going to go point by point. He's going to teach you, and he's going to walk you through in this fatherly way. His voice doesn't go up. He's going to be very consistent.
For sure.
So when you watch this, like I believe in like being like a tactician. So like I want to see that story was incredible. What was good about that? Well, it wasn't belabored. He touched on high points. His voice inflected at a specific point, which also means that you have to be, if you want to be an elite communicator, you have to practice at it.
For sure.
You can't only practice your communication, which I do believe is malpractice if you only practice on your people. And so if the only time you ever practice, like just Sundays, I don't think that that's the greatest stewardship, and it's definitely not helping you work on your ability. Because when I was an athlete, I didn't just go play on Saturdays. We practiced throughout the week. Like we found ways to work on our skills. Pace, breath, like you said, using filler words, I think is really important. And it matters, stage presence. Like Pastor Chris stays behind the podium 90% of the time.
Right.
Ty Tribbett, if you ever seen him preach, he's never in one place. He's jumping up and down, moving left to right. Mike Todd is clapping maybe on a trampoline, right?
For sure.
There's a lot of movement on what he's doing. I think it has to fit your personality type. Like I'm a mover, right? I'm not like I walk from side to side because I also try to make my preaching as relational as possible. I'll call people names out on the crowd at times, and I'll act like I'm talking. I'll be talking specifically to them. Sometimes that is spirit led. I feel God speaking to, and then other times it's like, hey, this is a way to connect with the crowd even more in a personal way, and so I can be effective in my communication. And so all of those things are things that I study, from pace, tone, and even if you're a communicator, so even knowing in preparation, there's a difference in how you communicate with a handheld mic versus a headset mic.
Facts.
Those are
for sure.
And so all those things are, if you want to preach, you get a handheld.
Yeah. Well, it's better for the noises too. Like I can do distant stuff. Like if I'm stuck, I like having both hands, but the flexibility of the tonality and the volume I can manage on a wraparound. I'm at the mercy of the front of house engineer. So no, it's a great point, and I hope people are hearing this, because I wish someone, when I was younger, because I started in theater. That's my degree. University of Tennessee, go Vols, go was in theater, and that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be an actor, and so. But I wish someone would have helped me, because for me was seeing people that I like, memorize it, and parrot it, and then it took me longer to find my voice. People would say, "Hey, you did this," and I'm like, "Not really," because when the lights come up, it's so. And I know most pastors can't honestly, who you are on platform and who you are in the meeting. Yeah. Honestly, sometimes it's subconscious, like, because there has to be a little bit more lift. There has to be a little bit more energy. We're on the platform. It's different. You're not being inauthentic. It's just different. You're preaching versus talking. But it took me longer to find my voice than I wish. And I love that you're bringing another guy along. So if you're listening or watching, and you're a quality communicator above, and you don't have someone following you closely and working with them, I think we're missing it. And if you're younger and working through that and don't have somebody, reach out to us, and we'll help you find somebody, or there's maybe someone that you need to just go ask and have the confidence and courage to DM them or whatever, and reach out. And so, because for me, power comes from what's true to you, right? Because your power, watch you on stage, you are a mover. You're charismatic. I would not say, at least when I watched you and the things that I have watched, would not assign you as much of a teacher as a preacher. And that you may have different. That may have just been one thing that I saw of you. Yeah. And you can do. You obviously multi-talented. You probably can teach if you were chilling out and speaking on a more difficult topic. Yeah. But some people see you and go, I got to do that. To get the reaction you got in the room, I got to move around. But you watching Chris Hodges, bro, don't move at all. No. And bro brings it down. And his power comes from his quiet strength. You know what I'm saying? And so if you're listening and you are a natural teacher and you can make difficult things simple, lean into that genius. That doesn't mean we don't have to necessarily – I struggle with this, and I love you to teach me a little bit on this, because I've heard completely different into the spectrum. If you're not good at it, don't worry about it. Work on what you're good at and be great.
Yeah.
Or, hey, if you're a 0, at least be competent in this spot. So I don't know, especially when it comes to storytelling, if it feels false to me, I avoid it. Because I started as an entertainer, truly.
Yeah.
I wanted to be a stand-up comedian. I wanted to be a theater. So moving into becoming a pastor was a struggle for me because I wanted to memorize it and I wanted to perform it.
Yeah.
I worked with my writing partner. He would write it. I may change a couple things. I'd memorize it, and then I would perform it at church for people. And I didn't see anything wrong with that. And I don't say memorizing is bad, but I was memorizing a script. I wasn't memorizing a message.
For sure.
And so for me, like, I just want – this is what we do now at Paper Giants, at Preach It Better. We want people to find their voice because we want to help you become the greatest storyteller. But if it's not true to you, it will never be true. I think people are better than ever in sniffing out inauthentic, like that they can feel it a mile away. You know this leading to church. If you walk in and you're trying to be something else, it's just it feels so false and it rings so untrue. So, as you're still young in comparison to some, but what did you do in the beginning? Like talk about like a mistake you made and how did you like trying to be something you weren't. If that makes sense, if you ever did that as your storyteller or in your learning, in your comeuppance, what did that look like and feel like to you?
Yeah, I would say to first answer one of the things that you said about inauthenticity, not finding your voice. Yeah, which is going to go into kind of what I'll say is nobody can be you as good as you can be you.
For sure.
I wish I knew that. So for me, to give a small snippet, like I didn't grow up in church like that, right? So my influences on it, like my dad, I got saved at a young age. Like my grandfather, he passed when my dad was like 4 or 5, but he founded a Church of God in Christ in East Texas back in the 40s or 50s, right? So like it was in our family, right? And my mom was Catholic. And so, like, I used to sleep under the pew at Mass when I was, like, 7 or 8 at times. And, that was that. So when I first kind of started getting into ministry, and even before that, like, when I first started a ministry, a Bible study, like, I was just in there just repeating what I heard my youth pastor say, right? Sure. When I finally started going to church. And so, for me, when I felt the call, when I said yes, and I started ministering and I started preaching, like, nobody ever taught me. Like nobody, what I do with my XP and how I discipled him, nobody ever did that with me. Like nobody sat me down and taught me how to properly dissect the Bible. Nobody sat there and talked to me about, hey, this is how you craft a message. This is what, hey, you can do your intro, 3 points, and a conclusion. Here's a topical, here's an expositional. Nobody ever did that. And so I just one thing that like I said, I played ball, so I just studied. And it was a real, some things are taught, other things are caught. Majority for me was just caught. Like I would just watch. I would just study. That was good for me because it did not allow somebody to turn me into them, like a them junior. But what it was bad for me is because I looked at who I thought was successful and I tried to become versions of them.
Exactly.
And so I was like, well, I really like that. So like maybe I should try and as I'm insecure and I'm young and I don't know and I look at them as they're the pinnacle. These are the greats.
Absolutely.
So I got to be them. And so same thing what you said, like I didn't find my voice for a long time. And it's funny you said that because literally I just had this conversation on this, whatever day this is, 2-3 days ago, that my XP was like, man, because he preached this past Sunday and did a phenomenal job. And he said, man, I went and watched back my sermons from when you put me up last year. And he's like, man, he's like, bro, and I cringed because I felt like he said, because I could see that and I feel like I was trying to be you. Yeah. And like, so he's like, I feel like now I have my voice and it showed on Sunday. But for me, it was in that same category. Like I just tried to figure out what I thought was good or what I thought was effective. What I did, and not recognizing that effective is kind of basic. Like, is it effective? Is there? But methodology on how to get effective is completely different. And we just talked about that. So for me, I had to figure like, who am I? I'm a natural storyteller.
Yeah, for sure you are.
You ask me a question, I can give you a story. I'm like Raymond Reddington, right?
For sure.
You ask me a question, I can give you a story associated with it.
Yeah.
And so I just had to figure out who am I. and where's my loyalty to?
Yeah,
I like
come on, right
I
there.
teach it to everybody that I disciple and talk to. I have two loyalties when I preach. One is number one, and will always be to God and to the Bible, to being theologically sound and accurate. I won't make the Bible say something it doesn't say just because I like it or because it sounds good. I despise that. Two is to being effective. So if I got to tell 5 jokes, then I'll do it. If I don't need to tell any jokes, whatever it may be, and I think it needs to be in that order. So, yeah, I just I think that not being secure that my identity or my skill set was enough was the greatest mistake that I made.
Wow. Man, you're teaching, you're preaching right now. And so for me, because I think imitation is the greatest form of flattery. So your XP, if you're listening and you've been watching people, and if you just side by side, I think that is absolutely a part of learning. But if there's no one in your life that is helping shape that imitation to turn you into who you are, it will always be. I think there's a more expiration date on your pastorship because it's not who you are. Learn from imitation. Like, right? You throw in a football, man, you're going to watch Dan Marino. It's got one of the greatest releases ever. You're going to Peyton Manning. You're going to watch Tom Brady focus. Okay, that feels weird in my shoulder with my muscle mass. My arm's a little bigger than theirs, but I tried that. Try to imitate. I don't think you and I are saying don't imitate. Don't. And
learn
do
from,
these things.
glean from.
Absolutely.
Don't be them.
But you had a quarterback coach.
Yes.
That was helping you manage imitation from falsehood, for something to give you an injury with your arm. Hey, if you keep throwing that way, it's going to ruin your elbow. If you're not going to be able with a shoulder pad and all these different things, you can't get it over the line with your height and all the whatever the case may be. So again, I'm saying if you don't have a mentor in your life to help manage that, especially for young communicators and pastors, because I think church planning is popping off more than ever. It's better than ever. We have better structures than ever, but we have more young communicators than ever.
For sure.
And if that's the case, like to you saying, hey, not only theologically, but just who you are, and praise the Scripture. So,
for sure, I think that, and I want to make sure that you said it, and I just emphasize, I still not as much as I would like to, just because scheduling, but I told my assistant the other day, I need to block off time, because not only that, I love preaching, I love the Word of God, I love watching. So I always, and I'll look and I'll say, man, I really like how he tied that in. I love how this is. So I think that we learn from. I think is that you said we can't try to become.
Right. That's there. There it is. That's the line.
That we got to learn. But yeah, absolutely, because there's gifts that you have, Micah. That
for sure.
I'm gonna look at it and I'm like, oh, I need to learn. How can I make that me? How can I?
That's the question. I like that. How can I make that me?
How can I
and
make
for who I'm leading as well, for your context, for your, and so that I love that. Learn from, don't become. That's the line. That's so great. What's one of the things as a leader, man? Your church is not even 2 years old. Where are we at? You launched in 24?
We're 16 months.
16 months. What has been something that surprised you? Obviously, you plan, you prep, you get mentoring, people help launched. What's something that was harder than you expected about Blueprint that was actually surprising with this is, I didn't even think that would be tripping or whatever.
Oh man. How real should I be?
As real as you want to be, baby. Come on.
One thing that was harder than I expected. We don't know what we're doing. So let's just be very we're
sure.
16 months old. We don't.
Yeah.
So I think it's easy. I think it's easy for it would be a cop out for me to say that systems will be as hard as it is. I think the emotional part of people using you and leaving you when you don't meet their expectation. I don't think that
okay.
I think that was harder than I expected, because I'm a pretty I don't want to say indifferent, but I'm not a sensitive person, right?
Okay.
So, but I think that there's been a couple situations in church and in ministry, whatever. But when you're the senior pastor, just kind of, I think I underestimated how sometimes things. I think one of the greatest misconceptions in church, in the body of Christ, is that pastors don't get church hurt. Like
Yeah.
the majority of our pastors in the body are church hurt.
Oh, extremely.
You know,
Sheep hurt, whatever you want to call
yeah,
it. Yeah, that's right.
absolutely. And
Yeah.
and I think that I underestimate because I'm like, man, I'm tougher than that. Like, this
Yeah,
is,
for sure. Okay.
But I think that there's been a couple of things that's kind of like, man, that hurt me a little bit more than I thought. I didn't think that I'd give that response. Again, I got this, and it's the challenge of fighting for your heart. That's how I'd sum it up.
Okay.
The challenge of fighting to guard your heart. I had a leader tell me one day, you have to be committed to keeping a soft heart towards those you are called to pastor, but a hardened heart to those who are committed to misunderstanding you, or or tough skin to those. Right?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, right.
Soft
Soft heart, tough skin.
If you have a hard heart towards those you're called to pastor, they'll never be able to touch you. You won't be able to love them. But if you have too soft skin towards the people who are wanting to hurt you, then you'll bleed over everybody else, and you'll become bitter. You'll become a bitter, angry pastor. And so I think
We've met them, boy. They out there.
Oh yeah,
those bitter boys are out there.
Yeah. In droves,
bleeding out there,
bleeding all over the congregation.
And give us some empathy if you're listening. If maybe you be one of those guys if you have some self-awareness. But like that, they weren't angry when they started.
No,
you know they were young, they were excited, they were empathetic, and they were whatever happened, however many times it happened. Like you said, man, like how do you manage that, and how do you keep people around you so that you can do it healthy for the long haul?
Yeah, no, I don't think that any pastor ever woke up and said, "Man, I'm gonna start a church, and then I'm gonna end up hating all of them."
Yeah,
and then just being angry with everybody and short-tempered and distant.
Yep.
No, and I don't want to say it like as leaders that we don't like as we're the total victim and we never cause any issues because obviously we don't do everything perfect by any means. And but yeah, I think that and then I just think managing quick growth. I think like
because you guys have popped off. Yeah, talk to me about that a little bit.
Yeah, I think that's been strategically that has been the greatest challenge for us. Emotionally was that part, but that's just kind of ministry. Strategically, it's just we pray for overflow. But it's like God,
do you want it?
You're flowing a little bit. And
everybody wants it, but like you ready for it if it comes?
Yeah. And the thing is I had a conversation with our staff 6 weeks ago, and I said, don't be fooled. We're not as good as you think. Mm-hmm. Because momentum is a liar.
Momentum. That's about to say momentum.
Momentum is a liar. Momentum will make you feel like you're winning when you're not.
For sure.
Momentum will make you. Momentum can cover up areas where we're not good.
For sure.
And the moment that momentum stops and the faucet isn't there, you start seeing every place in your boat that has a leak, and so managing.
Right.
Strategizing, but most importantly, if we're going to keep our calling at purpose as shepherds, stewarding growth. Because stewarding growth is not just stewarding church attendance; it's stewarding the people God sent into the church for you to love and pastor.
Absolutely.
And we haven't always done the best job at that. And we think we've done a good job in some areas, and sometimes hey, we're building the plane and flying at the same time and trying to figure it out. So that has been probably the strategically the hardest thing.
Hear that, pastors? You praying for growth, but I think there's a lot of guys, and I talk to them every day. I'm like, hey, you're praying for it, you're not ready for it, and maybe the reason you ain't getting it, I don't know. I usually under spiritualize things. If I can be candid with you, I'm the opposite of most guys. I'm like, hey, God's not giving you people because you don't have the systems. I'm not ever going to say that, but a lot of guys, hey man, if 500 people showed up on Sunday, what you doing with them?
It would break you.
You ain't got the seats, you ain't got the parking spots, you ain't got the volunteers. They're gonna come and leave, and you're gonna do more harm than good.
I told a church planner this who I was mentoring, and he was like, "Man, I want 1,000 people on day one. Like I want 1,000." And I'm like, "Man, PM, like I saw what y'all did. Like I don't." And I'm like, I said, "Let me just tell you, the same flood that made the boat float, the ark float, is the same one that killed the rest of humanity."
Yeah, that's right, dude.
Be careful for the rain that you pray for.
Yeah, that's a great word, man. It is. It is, man. And the only thing I'll say to that momentum for your team, because I experienced that at a church that grew to 8,000 in Knoxville, Tennessee. Insane. Crazy. But there were seasons of lulls, and when you don't assign why you're winning, you won't know why you're losing.
Yes, sir.
Because if it's all Holy Spirit and God and this and that, which it is, bro, again, there's such a big part of that. We don't understand the mystery of it. St. Paul says a mystery. Okay. All right, it's a mystery to me. So I'm going to focus on what we can. And so if you're not assigning some of these things to why we are winning at Blueprint, when we hit lulls or even we dip, we're going to start pointing fingers and not looking at hey, you know what I'm saying? So that's why I'll never forget those times. 2017, the spring of 2017, 18% growth was our average over 20 years. And in the spring of 17, it stopped, bro, just halted. God. And we were all like, and literally in meetings, the highest leadership in these meetings were sitting around and the sentence was, we didn't know why we were winning, so now we don't know why we're losing.
So good. I'm writing that phrase down because that is so good. Because you have to be able to put a description to it.
Yes.
You'll never, because you don't know. And I think that
yes.
And that's why I said like momentum, winning, quote unquote, winning is it. I forget who said this, but winning is a horrible teacher.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Nah. Yeah. Nah.
Because when you're winning, you're like, oh, and if you win too much, you think you can't lose.
Yep.
Which is the worst play. And like you said, and then if you don't know why, it's you can't replicate it. Right. And you know, the example that I gave to somebody about how momentum and winning can be a bad teacher, but also why it's a dangerous place, because winners will make losers or non-contributors feel like they're winning. Like think about people who are the 15th guy on the bench. They contribute, but they did not play, and so they may not have shown up. And everybody gets a ring.
Everybody.
But it's kind of like, and then what it breeds is what? That's entitlement, that's arrogance, that's pride, and then God can't work in those spaces. And so it's not just at the top; it's all throughout an organization in any place. But I love that. If you don't know why you're winning, you'll never know why you're losing.
How would you know? And again, if your only response to, hey, why do you think Blueprint's winning, is God's moving? That's incredible. It is. But I think a lot of people want to talk like John the Baptist. John the Baptist didn't have a church.
Nope.
John the Baptist was a wild man. You want to be all spirit-led? Hey, go put camel skin on and go move in the woods and be wild. That's cool. But we got families. We got buildings. This is the real world. So that's just, I struggle with, not to dismiss what John the Baptist did. The man was a legend. And there are people doing that. There are missionaries that are, Kevin Hart talks about this. Kevin Hart talks about what he can say versus what Dave Chappelle can say, because Dave Chappelle ain't got a business.
Yeah.
He pop-ups and does his thing. Kevin Hart is like, hey, I'm trying to protect the thing I got going on.
Yeah.
And so that's another difficult for you as well as a storyteller. Like, as the church grows, as money grows, do we get more fearful of losing that, so we start itching ears instead of preaching the truth because we don't want to lose what we built? And it becomes potentially more about the logo than the Lord, and then we can get all twisted up a little bit. You know what I'm saying? So man, you guys, it's a lot what you work through, man. It's a lot what you work through, and I pray for you guys every day. It's crazy, man. It's crazy.
Man, I think it is crazy. I think the one thing that's the challenging thing that gives me a little peace, and my pastor said this to me the other day, is consistently reminding myself that, like, it's not a short-term game. No. Like, and because I'm an incredibly impatient person.
Oh, bro, I'm a sprinter. I'm
like,
going.
We talk about how we're getting furniture and stuff delivered to our office.
Yeah.
Everything I told him, I need the whole office furnished today. Like, we're not going room by room.
Today.
Buy it all at once. Bring it all at once. At one time.
Today.
I want to go in there in a couple hours and just see everything there. Right. Because for me, it is a sense of complete the task, move to the next one. I don't want to do this month to month. No, we don't do that. And so it's the same thing that I'm sitting there, and I remember I had a conversation with my pastor, and I'm like, I suck at this. Like, I got to get better at this. Like, tell me what I need to do. Do I need to fly out there and spend a week with you? Do I need to take this course? He's like, first of all, relax.
He's like, relax, my guy.
You're 31. You've been a senior pastor for 15 months.
Yeah, right.
Just pump the brakes.
Yeah.
Secondly, like, you don't have to know it all at one time. Yeah. Like, this is a journey.
You're right.
You're going to be pastoring for the next 20 years, 30 years. Sure. Like it's okay to not know what you're going to know at 35, at 31.
Right.
And so I think what you're saying, how crazy it is, what makes it is to say, hey, like, like, how do we do this in steps?
Yep.
And that doesn't take away from saying, hey, let's pursue it with passion.
Right.
For
sure.
And like, hey, like, trees don't grow faster because you pour more water on them. They grow
For
at
sure.
the time that they're
Dude,
supposed
come
to.
on.
Yeah,
Come on.
I was telling somebody yesterday when in our dinner, I was just like, man, a lot of people have the bucket of water theory that if something's not growing fast, like you just throw the water. And it's like, bro, it doesn't work like that.
It's the opposite.
Sunlight, food, water, it grows at the pace that it's supposed to. And so,
That's awesome. And I would say that for you because I'm very similar.
Okay.
And so what I do is, so like when you do ultra marathons, I read David Goggins' book, You Can't Hurt Me, and lost my mind and started running in the woods like a lunatic. I don't know if you know anything about David Goggins, but they have these rest stations. So like who's gonna carry the boats, bro? And so for me, like I'm hearing everything you say, and it struggles for me building what we're building this ministry. Like this is a thing that I want to give my life to, but I do want to. So focusing me on these short sprints and getting to that next rest station.
Yeah.
Because I'm not going to turn it down to a 4 ever. It's not going to be me, right? I don't think that's going to be you. So if you're a high energy guy, I think it's for us is, hey, sprinting and then resting in that rhythm of like, hey, I'm going to push hard for this season. And be honest with yourself, it can't be a never ending season, especially for your team more than even for you. Because so that's what I try to do, and I still am horrible at it, bro. Because I want it all today. I want it done today.
What you just said is, I just had this conversation with my therapist yesterday or 2 days ago. Is I recognize one of my leadership flaws in year one is that I love high pressure situations. I love it. So
Same.
like what you like I was the kid in the driveway. 3, 2,
For sure.
1.
Yeah.
I love 2 minutes.
Of course.
I love high because the pressure's on.
Yeah.
It's like maybe.
Come on.
Yeah, and I think there's something that's like it's something that's off about us that likes that. It is kind of sick because I want anxiety. I want pressure. Like I don't mind staying up till 2:00 in the morning on a Saturday night to go preach a sermon at 8 a.m. Like this is like it sounds crazy, but what I told my therapist is I said I've recognized that one way I did not lead well is because I'm okay with chaos. Some of my team is not, and I cannot operate in this for longevity because it won't be healthy for me. Yep. But because I can thrive in chaos, that does not mean everybody else can. Right. And so the idea is, and I had somebody tell me this. What's my guy's name? Jeff. Jeff told me this. I forget his last name, but Jeff he told me this a while back. He said, "What is appropriate in one season can be sin in another."
Oh wow!
And he said, "So you living and working and sacrificing as hard as you can, it may be okay, but eventually you have to change it." And that's that rest that you're talking about.
For sure.
What is good for this season? But yeah. So for me.
Bro, we the same, man. It's when you saying that, like, I'm like, I'd rather take the last shot and miss it than someone else take it and win. Yeah. I want that last shot. I want it to be on me. I want it to be. I want the ball. And so like you said, and I'm cool with chaos. I'm cool with gray. I'm cool with nuance. Hey, I don't know exactly what's going to happen, but the people that help build your organization need clarity.
Absolutely.
Because you and I, who see it before, are cool with, I don't know how this is going to work out, but we'll figure it out in the room because I've done it my whole life. Good on my feet. I'm cool with it. The people that are going to help build a structure, because you're not an evangelist. You're not a traveling apostle. I mean, you're building something that's got structure to it, and we need people that can build structures, and those people need clarity and a little time.
And that's why I figured out that it's inconsiderate and it's unkind.
For sure.
It's because like my wife is we're polar opposites. My wife hates that. My wife is not a throw something at me at one. Like, no, I want to tell me what to do. She'll get overwhelmed. Yep. And those, but my wife is so much more patient than me as well. Right. So it kind of speaks into that, like,
for sure.
For me, a building's on fire, like, perfect.
Yeah. Okay. Like, great.
Let's do it. But so yeah,
because I like the energy of that chaos. To be honest with you, it's exciting to me, even if it's an unhealthy spot. Like, I like this. What we talking about? We're winning. This is boring. Like, what is this? All cool? 9 to 5. Who else do that? Like, I want that. Like, desperation.
Give me the biggest problem. Like, I was the guy that was like, man, what's the record? Mm-hmm. What's the hardest thing to do in here? Like, let's figure it out,
bro.
Let's do it.
I got so much more to talk about. I know you got a ton of stuff going on, so this is obviously part one. Because we will have you back, man. Because a big question I want to leave us all with, because this is my biggest fights with my father, was culture is amoral, in my opinion. And how do you? And that's actually I want to ask you this. I got to tell you. If you have to leave, just walk away. But how do you preach the being in the world but not of it? How do we? There's evil in the world, but people that don't know God are not. They have evil inside of them, but I feel like we preach and we are at odds with them, and we create more distance than bridges. We create walls, not windows. So that's the last thing I'll ask of you is, like, what is that in your communication of, hey, there is sin up there. There's sin in us. But if this is ivory tower vibe, and there's we're not going to Zacchaeus' house. We're not going out there, and we're preaching to our families almost in a fear way that we're going to hell in a handbasket. This generation, this, that, and the other. Of course they're not evangelizing. You scare them to death. So, like, speak to that a little bit, and then I'll let you go.
Great question, and I feel like I interpreted it correctly. So what I would say is this: I agree with you. Culture is amoral. So it's not nothing wrong necessarily. Nope. It's kind of how we do things and what. This is what I'll say. The way that I think that I have seen it be most effective, especially in a church of predominantly new or younger believers. Like we've seen a lot of people cross this line, which is what I'm about to mention. I think in preaching, I always point back to Jesus, right? Obviously. But my goal in dissecting being in the world, not of the world, is I make sure that I make a clear, distinct line is that what is of God, what is of not, but I don't create a boundary to say you're not supposed to come over here. What I do is in that aspect is like, hey, this is God. This is what God wants from us. Like I said, I'm confrontational. So I don't mind calling out these things. Right. And making people feel a little bit uncomfortable, but I always do it with my hand outstretched and saying, I want you to come this way. God wants you on this side. And so I think that using certain, because when we talk about culture and things like that, I think one of the greatest disservices we can do as communicators is, like, you can't not know who you're preaching to. Like, you have to be able to know the culture of what's going on. Paul said, I became like many in order to win a few. Like that idea, we look at Paul when he went and he was going into Ephesus and into these cities. He was preaching where? In the marketplace, in the town square, not just in the temple. Why? I'm going to go where they're at, and I'm going to know what they're doing. I know how to speak their language. I'm a tent maker myself. I know how to speak the certain languages. I can go out and I can speak into certain things. So for me, I know how to evangelize a CEO or a drug dealer. I know how to evangelize an athlete or a frat guy. Like but you have to be able to know who you're speaking to. And I think that the way that we don't do that is we just say, hey, I'm over here. There's a difference between us, and I'm trying to get you because you're so bad to come over here. The idea is like, hey, let me learn so I can be relational, and then I can bring you over here. I can show you the goodness, not of me, but the goodness of God. And that is what has been the greatest, I think, strategy for us, and what I've seen with a lot of communicators that I admire, because there's a difference between putting up a gate and a boundary. And a boundary is saying, like, hey, this is, and I think that the word of God doesn't change. It's unchangeable. Yeah. The standard of God doesn't change. Like what the expectation of God doesn't change. Right. But like you said, when you build a wall, it keeps people out. A boundary shows where the threshold is. So our goal is to bring people into across this threshold, and to become believers of Jesus Christ. And I could go on a whole.
Come on, yeah, I love it.
But
I love it, man.
It's kind of on my philosophy on communicating that.
My man, dude. Thank you so much for doing this.
Thank you, brother. Like this is man, I love this so much. This is part one.
Part one.
Part one.
Part one.